Alright, we are on page 352, which is the middle of Siman Kuf Lamed. Okay, so we're talking about how God created evil, but eventually evil is going to be destroyed. Hashem didn't create evil that it should last forever, but rather that it should eventually be destroyed. V'hine, kamo shebiarnu, shalahamsas habitul hazeh, lo yichara adon baruchu shem shleimuso alav. So we said that Hashem, this is something we mentioned earlier, Hashem is not miyached shema al hara, that Hashem does not make his name associated with evil. And we mentioned earlier in the Sefer that therefore Hashem creates evil differently than how he creates good. Ki adram, on the contrary, memasa shleimuso hu l'kayim kol davar toiv, afilu b'toch hafseidim b'shas kalkaloso. V'lo zaz me'rachef aleim k'dei l'kayim atov shlo yizbantel b'tol gavar. Not only that, when we talk about Hashem's attribute of completeness, of shleimus, not only is it not associated with evil, but furthermore, it actually has the power to keep good existing even within evil. So there's two things that we have about shleimus. One is that shleimus is not associated with evil at all, and two is that it can keep good existing even in the face of evil. Now, he says, we were talking about just in general, about the world and evil and good in general in the world. Now he's going to say how it applies specifically to man. How this concept of Hashem's shleimus, of Hashem's completeness, applies specifically to a human being at a certain stage. Something that we talked about earlier with the different specifications of humans. Adam kiyamos. When a person passes away, his soul leaves him. And his body goes to the earth like it originally was. And it's one idea. As a person's body is built from darkness. Darkness and physicality. The body, a human being's body, comes about from Hashem, quote unquote, hiding himself. We mentioned earlier in the Sefer that anything evil or anything that is, we'll say, has deficiencies. Now, a body isn't evil, but a body has deficiencies because it's not spiritual. That comes about through Hashem, so to say, hiding himself. Like we explained. Now, when a person also has a soul, a spiritual part, and that spiritual part is meant to purify the body. That's what we talked about, that now the soul is kind of, Hashem made a rule that the soul can't totally purify the body because the body wouldn't be able to handle the soul. We just become like angels right away, but Hashem didn't want that to happen right away because we don't have free will. Love in the future, that's going to happen. But that's the idea of the soul. That's a direct purity from Hashem. Now when Hashem is looking towards a creature, looking towards a human being, a person goes like we're living today. Hashem is all looking towards us, so to say, metaphorically, that we are alive. However, when Hashem decides to no longer shine His light on a human being, when He just leaves the darkness to be there, then the soul will leave the body. Bishar haguf meis ke'evin daimim, and the body will just be like will be dead, will be like a rock. V'ulam gam yibatal v'yipasid, and then it will be destroyed. Hisila kodem baruchu panav imenu v'ksiv taster panecha yibaleon tosif rucham yigavun v'al afram yeshuvun. It says that when Hashem hides His face from something, it will be confounded, and you'll perish and return to the dust. So when Hashem is looking towards a person, He's alive, His soul is in His body. But when Chas v'Shalom, Hashem decides that it's time for a person to leave this world, He turns away from the person, so to say, and all He's left with the body. And the body, right now our bodies are animated, they're not decaying, but when Hashem decides to turn His face away from a person, then the body will begin to decay. V'amnam, kasher lo legamri yaster adon baruchu es minei tuva la'olam, when Hashem decides, okay, fine. So Hashem doesn't totally turn away from the world. Ki eza shav ma'aro yagia Cheshchat hester apanim l'kiyumo shel olam. L'chein lo yibatel gam haguf hazeh bitul gamor v'lo tazveu haneshama l'gamrei. Hashem never completely turns away from the world, and so too with the body. Elakimu ma shekiblu rabbeinu hakadoshim. But rather, like our rabbis told us, it's very interesting. We're saying that even when evil, even when it's destruction, Hashem never totally turns away from the world, so too He never turns away from the body. So we said, what is it when Hashem turns towards a person? That's the soul. So it says, even though when Hashem turns away from a person, He passes away, but He never completely turns away, and there's an element of the soul that remains with a person's body after he dies. And that's called Havla de Garme, the vapor of the bones. Kabbalistic ideas. Now, what's the purpose of this level of a soul which exists when a person passes away? That's to keep the certain parts of the body intact for the time of the resurrection of the dead. There has to be a certain level of the soul that's still with the body. It sounds like, because without that, then it would be a whole new creation when a person's recreated, when resurrected. But here, when a person's resurrected, since there's an element of the soul that is still with the body, when a person is resurrected, it's not a new creature, it's just the same person coming back. Ela osam shekvar mesu atzmam. Kraksiv, it's a pasuk. V'ezbiya b'tzach tzachos nafshecha v'atzmosecha yachalitz. He shall sate your soul with the radiant light and give vitality to your bones. So we're saying that when Hashem, there's two parts of a person. We have a body and we have a soul. That the body comes about from Hester Panim, Hashem hiding Himself, and the soul comes about from Hashem shining His light and looking towards a person, so to say. Obviously, we know Hashem doesn't have a face and all that stuff. However, we understand we're talking about it in human terms. And when Hashem turns away, a person dies. He no longer has that soul, that life force. So therefore, a person passes away, and his body will start to decompose. However, Hashem never totally leaves a person because there is a lower level of a neshama called Havla de Garme that allows the resurrection to happen, that it's the same person and not a totally new creation. Okay? Good? So, okay. Amr HaNeshama, Kuf Lamed Aleph. The soul says, Kol Elo Dvarim Yasham Aleivim Vade. These things, they're all very understandable. Kilo Yeh Adam Baruch Hu Mois Yagi Akav. Hashem doesn't detest His creations. Aval Esatov Yikayim, the good, He wants to exist. V'yasmer Elav Harabah Gugulim Esivosav. And for many, the vicissitudes of history cause that evil will be destroyed. So the thing that we took out of this chapter was that God created evil, but He didn't create evil that it should last forever. For sure, didn't create evil that it should overpower good, but He created evil with the intent that eventually it will be destroyed. Now, in this next section, He's going to discuss more like the details of how specifically God made evil that it should be destroyed, and He's going to talk about how human beings are really, God started the process of destroying evil, even though He created it. He started the process of destroying evil, and we are, so to say, partners with Hashem to finish off by destroying evil.